We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
The Texas abortion law has become a court ping-pong match. Parents are domestic terrorists, and there's a pushback against the weaponization of the FBI. And that's just for starters here on our Talking Liberty segment on Liberty Nation Radio. Now, there's no one better to help unravel the legal and constitutional issues than Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor and host of the Uprising podcast, Mr. Scott D. Cosenza, Esquire. Thanks for being here, Scott.
Thank you, Mark.
So a couple of quick questions before we dive into the meat and veg of today's segment. Let's start with the Texas abortion law. It seems to be bouncing from court to court to court. How does this actually end? And is the conservative, well, heavily conservative Fifth Circuit likely to be the final arbiter of challenges?
I've got good news for you, Mark. For you and I both. It never ends. There's going to be challenge upon challenge.
There's always TV.
And then however the court rules, the people on the margins of the outside of both sides of the issue, so the most strident of the pro-choicers and the most diligent and vehemently passionate on the pro-lifers will use their political power to kind of trim around the margins. But I think the answer you probably were looking for is that the Supreme Court's going to rule on this abortion question in a major fashion, or decline to in a major fashion this term. They have already accepted the case. It's being briefed and it will be argued. And that's going to, I think, settle a good bit of this, at least for a moment, until the people who are animated to make a change on both sides start their work.
Okay. And I want to ask you about this new breed of domestic terrorists that are threatening the safety of all of our children and our nation and our republic.
Are you referring, Mark, to the
democracy.
Loudoun County parents?
I am talking about parents, yes, those domestic terrorist parents. Now, You have the U.S. Attorney General, Merrick Garland. He's looking to take these folks to task with threats from the FBI. And it all seems like a targeted campaign to demonize those who speak against the Biden administration's educational and cultural wish list. Now, I have two questions for you on this. Now, first, how can this sit with the First Amendment? Surely it's an enshrined right to question things and to make your opinion in the public, in the town square, as they call it, no matter how against the system your opinion may be.
I call him the 10th Justice, Mark. Merrick Garland, of course, who was supposed to have been nominated, or was nominated rather, and not installed by the Republican Senate. An interesting fact in this regarding this story is that apparently his son-in-law is engaged commercially in an education company that deals with these issues, and he may benefit financially from people not speaking up about it. But you're absolutely right. The First Amendment does guarantee this, and that's why if you parse his language, you'll see talk of threats or some other imposition on the rights of the people who are being talked about. But the announcement itself, I think, and the way it's done has a chilling effect on free speech, and that's why it shouldn't be done. And that's why we should more carefully choose our presidents and have them more carefully choose our attorneys general.
The second question, Scott, is that 17 state attorney generals have written a letter to Joe Biden questioning this move through Merrick Garland to call parents domestic terrorists. Now, am I right in thinking that although these 17 state attorney generals have sent a letter is really, in this case, not worth the paper it's written on?
I'm going to go ahead and just guess without even considering it for one moment that all those 17s have an R after their name, Mark.
Very astute.
It was a politically motivated letter, and you're right, it doesn't have any. I mean, to the extent that, the federal attorney general is wise to consider the considered opinions of the state attorneys general in doing their job. There's absolutely no power they can exercise over him legally, and there is no mandate for him to respect their opinion more than he respects yours and mine.
Which I'm reasonably sure he doesn't. So, Scott, let's move on to the legal cases that we're seeing this week. Now, the Missouri governor has called a journalist who found a security flaw in a system a hacker and has threatened to sue the journalist and the Post-Dispatch for which the journalist works. Could you give us the details on that?
This reporter's name is Josh Renard, and they're a reporter for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and they're also a tech and web expert who writes sometimes for the publication. We'll have to get our tech people up on the author page, perhaps to get some product out of them, Mark. But what he did was he figured out that in coding their website, the state of Missouri encoded the teachers' social security numbers in the HTML code, the sort of behind the scenes language that a web browser looks at to determine what's displayed on its page. And you and I know, Mark, from our loading of the website, that you can basically turn a button on and you can see what code websites are publishing. This is public information. And that's what this reporter discovered. And you know what they did with the information, Mark? The most responsible thing possible. They alerted the state that they were publishing this private information, gave them an opportunity to stop publishing it, and then published their story about how the state was publishing it. But Governor Mike Parsons, I think perhaps in a senior moment that he doesn't understand how tech works, I'm not exactly sure, has threatened criminal prosecution of this reporter, who again exposed exposed the state's malfeasance in publicly publishing thousands of social security numbers of teachers on their website.
Well, as we know, the American judicial system is set up to prevent politicians being embarrassed and nothing more. Now, there's actually a similar situation in the UK, in Scotland in particular, where there's one of the ministers said that this £600,000 system to ensure that people can have COVID vaccination passes on their phones was completely secure, and people got around it. Now, these people are naturally hackers who learned how to take a screenshot and then share said photograph with their friends. People who are doing such a thing are obviously very dangerous criminals. Now, Scott, another issue that
liberty finds a way. I like it.
Yeah, there's another issue I find quite interesting is that the Capitol rioters from January 6th, now they're facing delays to their trials caused by court backlogs and masses of evidence. Now, what's really going on with this?
Mark, it seems like the federal government, and with some cooperation from the federal judiciary, are doing everything they can to make the road most difficult for the accused in the January 6th riot, insurrection, whatever you want to call it. And it's one of those things where it's so disheartening because these people are supposed to be prosecuted and punished within the law, but having them have to suffer through a punishment outside the law is supposed to be verboten and not part of our system. So making them have extra onerous pretrial detention conditions, which they've had, delaying the eventual rulings on their cases, which we see, to the extent that those things are politically motivated, and they seem to be, they're unacceptable. And that's why I think the story deserves attention. Another instance where these defendants' fundamental rights seem to be being abridged for political purposes. It's bad enough if they're being abridged because of it's a scheduling issue or because of, more innocent reasons, but that they're more nefarious and perhaps politically based, I think is even more important.
Yep, rights are rights no matter who they're for. Scott D. Cosenza, thank you ever so much.
Thanks, Mark.
And that's about it for this week's episode of Liberty Nation Radio. I want to thank our guests, Lisa K. Donner, Andrew Moran, and James Fight. And as ever, our Talking Liberty star, Scott D. Cosenza, for taking the time to join us. And I want to thank you, the listeners coast to coast, for being here. It's your engagement that makes it all worthwhile. I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Written by St. Augustine in his Confessions, it goes, "It was a day when I was preparing a speech to be delivered in praise of the emperor. There would be a lot of lies in the speech, and they would be applauded by those who knew that they were lies." This strikes me as eerily similar to what's happening today. The government tells us we're better off, and those who support this new naked emperor in the White House applaud, knowing in their hearts that it's all a big lie. The government will lie and spin because that's what governments do. It's those who applaud the falsehoods that are shaming us with their dishonesty. Until next time, thanks for listening. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit one generation away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.